We must acknowledge, there are many hates about Scrum in the industry right now. And from what I have observed, most of these hates come from software engineers. Well, okay, there is quite a lot of hate speech on Scrum from consultants also, but let's leave that for another discussion. So if you search on the internet using these 4 keywords, software engineers hate Scrum, you will find many rants about Scrum in forms of articles or blog posts written by software engineers. You can also find these rants in software development discussion forums. But here's the thing, when you read their rants closely, what they're ranting about is actually not Scrum. They're actually ranting about a feature factory that unfortunately has been masked as Scrum by someone else in their company. For those of you who haven't watched my video on Feature Factory, you can click the link up here to watch the video so that you can understand what I mean by Feature Factory whenever I mention it throughout today's video. Now, one of the easiest ways to identify whether feature factories exist in your workplace is by observing how people plan their sprints. Professional Scrum teams plan their sprint differently to feature factories. If you want to know how to plan your sprints like the professionals, don't go anywhere, stay tuned as I'll be back right after this one. What's good this week, awesome people? Welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new to my channel, welcome to the community of passionate change makers. My name is Joshua Partugi. I'm currently based in Brisbane, Australia. That's right, down under. I love Scrum because based on my personal experience in the past decade, when done right, Scrum can leverage people's potential to a new height. So let's get back to today's topic, how to plan a sprint like the professionals. I have divided today's video into 2 parts. In the first part, I will share with you how feature factories plan the sprint so you will have an idea what you want to avoid doing at your workplace. And in the second part, I will share with you how professional Scrum teams plan their sprints according to Scrum Guide version 2020. Now the second part will be longer and more elaborative. I will also use a tool called Kanbanize to explain the dynamics in sprint planning. So make sure you stay until the end of this video, otherwise you will not be able to create actionable plans to shut down feature factories from your workplace. And to make it easier for you to get back to today's learning in the future, I have also put chapter markers on this video. You can check the chapter markers on the slider of this video player. Alright folks, let's do this! Before we look at how professional Scrum teams plan their sprints, let's look at how people in feature factories plan their sprints. The first and easiest way to identify whether there is a feature factory at your workplace is by looking at the product backlog items presented during sprint planning. Feature factories only have features in the product backlog. Well, because it's feature factories. Feature factories don't have items that are related with technical excellence, technical improvements, system architectures, paying technical debts, learnings, discovery, and also experiments in their product backlog. In Scrum, learning and improvement should be built into every sprint. But in a feature factory, people are not given slack time to improve because they are viewed as a cog in a machine who only works according to the defined specification. The second thing you want to observe during sprint planning is how people start the sprint planning. People in a feature factory don't start their sprint planning with setting a goal. Even if they have a sprint goal, it's not an outcome-driven sprint goal. As they work in a feature factory, their only goal is to complete as many features as possible to meet an arbitrary deadline. The third thing you should observe during sprint planning is whether people are self-managed in selecting which and how many product backlog items they will take into the sprint. In a feature factory, you can see the product owner imposes the product backlog items to be completed. In a tragic case, you can see the Scrum Master defines the technical solutions, breaks down the work, and also assigns the work to people. Self-management is one of the key tenets of Scrum, but in a feature factory, everyone thinks that self-management in a workplace is only a utopia. The fourth thing you should observe during sprint planning is whether arbitrary numbers like velocity or story point are being imposed on people by the product owner. Quite often, the product owner may cajole people to meet this velocity. In a tragic case, you will see the Scrum Master set the velocity people need to achieve. In a feature factory, either the product owner or the boss of the product owner or someone from the management or sometimes even the customer already sets the velocity people need to achieve every sprint. The fifth thing you should observe during sprint planning is whether there is a cross-functional collaboration. In a feature factory, most often people who attend the sprint planning are from the same functions, because in a feature factory, every function has their own dedicated sprint. For example, user experience sprint, design sprint, development sprint, testing sprint, and even DevOps sprint. In a feature factory, this is done to ensure that people are as busy as possible and their capacity is filled to 100%. Some feature factories are slightly better though, because people who attend the sprint planning are from multiple different functions. But they're still siloed and only create work that are related to their own functions or their job title. In this kind of feature factory, people view a sprint as a mini waterfall. And the last thing you should observe during sprint planning is whether people use the definition of done when gauging the product backlog items. Some feature factories have a definition of done, and people in there know the difference between definition of done and acceptance criteria. But the definition of done does not contain technical excellence or craftsmanship aspects, because people in feature factories believe those aspects will lower the amount of features they can complete in the sprint. Besides the definition of done, you should also observe whether actionable improvements that people discussed from the previous sprint retrospectives are being considered when they gauge the product backlog items. Now, have you seen any other behaviors or characteristics of a feature factory during sprint planning that I didn't mention? Leave a comment down below so as a community we can learn from each other how to shut down feature factories at our workplace. Alright folks, after we have seen some of the indicators of how feature factories plan their sprint, now let's look at how professional Scrum teams plan their sprint. I'm also going to demonstrate to you how professional Scrum teams incorporate Kanban during sprint planning. I've been advising many Scrum teams to use Kanban as a complementary practice for Scrum. Bear in mind that I will not cover Kanban in detail in today's video. I've already made a video on how to use Scrum with Kanban. You can click the link up here to watch the video. And after watching today's video, please do not make a conclusion that Kanban is only a tool or a board with columns and swim lanes. Kanban is much more than that. In today's video, I will use Kanbanize as a tool for demonstration. And as a transparency to all of you, Kanbanize is supporting today's video. I have advised many Scrum teams I have worked with to use Kanbanize because it can generate flow metrics that can be used for decision making during all of the Scrum events. Today's video will also use a case study that I have used on my product goal video. I will use the same case study again as it fits well with the definition of complex problems as defined in the Scrum Guide version 2020. And also because the majority of people around the globe can relate and most probably have experienced the problem stated in that video. Anyway, if you haven't watched my product goal video, you can click the link up here to watch the video first, so you will understand the context in the demonstration. Alright, let's look at what the Scrum team prepares and need to consider before planning their sprint. The first input for the sprint planning is of course the product backlog. The product backlog must already be ordered. As we are using Scrum with Kanban, these are the columns to visualize our flow of value delivery. Based on the columns on the Kanban board shown here, the product backlog are all of the items inside options to be agreed, refining, and refine columns. The product backlog items in the refine column are deemed ready to be pulled into the processing column for the sprint. But it does not mean the Scrum team can only pull these items during sprint planning or even throughout the sprint. And also, as you can see here, the product backlog does not only consist of features. As you can see here, every type of product backlog items are color-coded differently. The product backlog may consist of marketing, regulatory, infrastructure, learning, and experiment items. And as this is the state of the product backlog when the first sprint has not yet started, we don't see any defects and technical improvements yet. Defects and technical improvements also go into the product backlog. In your context, there could be many more types of product backlog item. The point is, the product backlog contains all of the items needed to make the product and also the items needed to achieve the product goal. Product backlog is not the only input for sprint planning. When developing products, the Scrum team must incorporate quality measures. The next thing the Scrum team needs to consider during sprint planning is the definition of done. The definition of done is the criteria to ensure the increment is always releasable. The amount of criterion in the definition of done may affect the number of product backlog items the Scrum team can take into the sprint. The Scrum team may deliver less features to ensure that one or more releasable increments is delivered every single sprint. That's why having the definition of done transparent during sprint planning is very important. Otherwise, the Scrum team and the stakeholders do not have a holistic view on what it actually takes to deliver a releasable increment every sprint. Without considering the definition of done every sprint planning, the Scrum team's historical performance will be inconsistent and also unreliable for forecasting. The definition of done is not the same as acceptance criteria. You can click the link up here to watch the video I've made to help you understand the difference between definition of done and acceptance criteria. So for the case study in this video, the definition of done will look like this. I have advised many Scrum teams I have worked with to use Wiki to record and maintain their definition of done. The definition of done will affect how many product backlog items the Scrum team can complete every sprint. The next thing the Scrum team must consider during sprint planning is their own historical performance. If it's their first sprint, they can just guesstimate. After the Scrum team has done several sprints, they can make a forecast using Monte Carlo simulation that is available on Kanbanize. I do not suggest using arbitrary numbers like velocity for forecasting during sprint planning, because most often velocity has been misunderstood and also abused. Not only does the Scrum team need to consider their own historical performance, they must also consider who will be involved during development in the sprint. Therefore, the next thing the Scrum team must consider during sprint planning is each other's availability. Note that I call it team members' availability rather than team capacity, because Scrum team members are not resources or factories or a cog in a machine. They are people. Everyone in the Scrum team must be transparent about their availability throughout the sprint. They must let each other know whether they are going to be away or on leave at any day during the sprint. The Scrum team must also consider whether they need any part-time team members during the sprint. When developing products, the Scrum team needs to develop themselves and also the practices they use to develop the product. The next thing the Scrum team must consider during sprint planning is the previous sprint retrospective commitments. It may be about learning or research on technology they want to use this sprint, or even setting up that technology itself. The Scrum team may also want to incorporate new techniques for writing their code, like test-driven development or behavior-driven development. They may also want to apply new coding design patterns. They may also want to adopt new people practices like pair programming or mob programming, and of course, many other techniques that exist in the Agile community. Now, I would like to bust a myth here. It's not true that Scrum is only about delivering as many features as possible as some people understood. Feature factories only concentrate on delivering features, but not professional Scrum teams. Professional Scrum teams also incorporate learning, experimentation, and technical excellence into their sprint backlog. And the last thing the Scrum team must consider during sprint planning is the state of the current increment. Alright folks, as we have learned, there are many inputs that the Scrum team needs to consider for planning their sprint. And thank you for still staying with us. But we're still not done yet. Now let's continue looking at the dynamics during sprint planning. The participants for the sprint planning are only the Scrum team. That is, the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the developers. I've already made specific videos on product owner, Scrum Master, and developers. You can go check it out on my channel because I won't go through these three accountabilities in today's video. To make it simple, the Scrum Master attends the sprint planning to facilitate the process. As such, the sprint planning will achieve its purposes and remove any impediments that emerge during the sprint planning process. The product owner attends the sprint planning to communicate what he or she already has in mind. The product owner will also make some trade-offs about the scope of work, the level of fidelity of the work that will be done by the developers. The developers self-manage to select the product backlog items that will achieve the sprint goal and to create the plan to turn it into releasable increments. This comes from asking questions and negotiating with the product owner. The whole Scrum team collectively creates the sprint goal. Now that we know the inputs and the participants for the sprint planning, let's look at the three aspects and the dynamics of a sprint planning. According to Scrum Guide 2020, the sprint planning consists of three aspects: setting the why, selecting the what, and lastly, listing down the how. These three aspects can go back and forth during sprint planning. It's very dynamic rather than sequential. Professional Scrum teams start their sprint planning with setting the sprint goal first. The Scrum team must collectively answer, why is this sprint valuable? Starting the sprint planning with answering the why models the idea written on Simon Sinek's book, Starting with the Why. If you haven't read that book, I suggest you read it. The Scrum team derives the sprint goal from the product goal. For the example purpose in the case study on this video, the Scrum team agrees this is the outcome-driven sprint goal. The Scrum team shares this sprint goal. They don't work on individual or their department goals. A sprint goal should be purposeful rather than constraining. The first thing you need to keep in mind is to avoid having a list of activities to be done as a sprint goal. For example, avoid having set up the infrastructure, create wireframes and database schema as a sprint goal. Avoid having something like create the first minimum viable product or MVP as a sprint goal. And secondly, you must also avoid stating list of features to be completed as a sprint goal. For example, avoid having deliver the login, registration, and landing page as a sprint goal. Feature factories have a list of activities or features to be completed as their sprint goal, but not professional Scrum teams. When the sprint goal is the activities or the list of features to be completed, the Scrum team's creativity and imagination is constrained. Just like how the product goal should be outcome-oriented, the sprint goal should also be outcome-oriented. If you haven't watched my video on outcome-driven metrics, you can click the link up here to watch the video. As we're using Kanbanize, do not put the sprint goal as an item on the Kanban board as it will mess up the Scrum team's flow metrics. I have advised the Scrum team I have worked with to post their sprint goal either on a wiki or as a pinned message on their group messaging tool instead. After the Scrum team sets the outcome-driven sprint goal, they will scan through their product backlog and look at the items that will most likely meet the sprint goal. And as we have learned, besides the sprint goal, they must also consider the definition of done, their historical performance, each other's availability, last retrospective commitments, and also the state of the current increment. The developers must be professional and may negotiate on the amount of product backlog items, the scope, and also the level of fidelity of the work with the product owner. The product owner should listen to the developer's feedback and make some trade-offs. If we look at the Kanban on Kanbanize again, as I said earlier, ideally the Scrum team selects the items in the refined column, as it already has all of the information they need to process the items, such as database schema, architecture model, test cases, acceptance criteria, wireframe, and all of that. But as Scrum teams are focused on achieving the sprint goal, they're also encouraged to pull items from the other column before the refined column. If they choose to do that, the item should not just jump to refined column. It still needs to go through all of the other columns before the refined column first. When the Scrum team uses Kanban to optimize flow, they should limit the number of work in process. The Scrum team doesn't pull all of the selected product backlog items in one batch to the processing column during the sprint planning, as that may violate their work in process limit. They will pull an item or more every time they see an empty slot in the processing column throughout the sprint. So during the sprint planning, they will just annotate or tag the product backlog items they think will likely achieve the sprint goal. In Scrum, every sprint, the team is encouraged to deliver top-notch increments, even with few features, rather than half-baked increments with many features. The third activity the Scrum team needs to do before the sprint planning ends is to create a plan how to turn the selected product backlog items into an increment that meets the definition of done, and also the sprint goal they have agreed on. In Scrum, the team is committed to the sprint goal, not the scope of work, not the list of activities. The plan can change throughout the sprint, but the sprint goal remains sacrosanct until the end of the sprint. As long as the Scrum team can achieve the sprint goal, they are considered to have a successful sprint. Keep that in mind, folks. When we use Kanbanize, We list down the plans as a list of tasks underneath each selected product backlog item. I know a plan is not a task. The plan can continuously be added and updated throughout the sprint. It's a myth that the developers only list down their plan during sprint planning. In fact, the daily scrum is an opportunity for the developers to continuously inspect and adapt their plan. The developers can also pull additional product backlog items at any point in time throughout the sprint, as long as it can meet the sprint goal. So, the output of sprint planning is the sprint backlog. The sprint backlog consists of the sprint goal, the selected product backlog items, and also the plan to turn the selected product backlog items into one or more releasable increments. As I have mentioned earlier, today's video is supported by Kanbanize. If you would like to try Kanbanize in your Scrum team and subscribe to it, you can use the referral link down here. Because transparency is one of the 3 pillars of Scrum, as a transparency to all of you, I will get a commission every time any of you subscribe to Kanbanize from that referral link. Every commission I get will help grow this channel. Thank you for your support to this channel, folks. Bravo! Bravo! Well done, folks, for watching today's video until the end. Considering it was quite a long video, great job, by the way. Give yourself a pat on the back. I really appreciate you. But what's most important is not just watching today's video. After watching today's video, I want you to create an actionable plan to teach your Scrum team how to plan the sprint like the professionals, and also an actionable plan to abolish feature factories from your workplace. This may involve challenging the status quo and talking to the management at your workplace. Are you feeling challenged? Do you feel the adrenaline right now? Can you feel your heart beating faster? That is all for today, folks. Don't forget to smash that like button down below and also to subscribe to my channel, because I will upload more videos in the future that can help improve your Scrum team's effectiveness and also your organization's state of agility. And for those of you who aspire to be an awesome Scrum Master, you can also subscribe to my podcast either on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Apple Podcasts. You can search my podcast name using the keywords Think and Act Like a Scrum Master. And while you wait for my next YouTube video or my next podcast episode, you can click the thumbnails here to watch the other videos currently available on this channel. Until then, don't forget to stay safe and stay awesome. Bye, folks.